5 a.m. in prison, the harsh reality of men's morning life. Subscribe for more real crime stories. Like, share, and join the discussion below. The ear-splitting clang of metal echoed through the corridors as the lights flickered on, signaling the start of another day in a maximum security prison. It was 5 a.m. and a new reality set in for the inmates. From the outside, this was just a routine morning, but within those walls, it signified a relentless cycle of confinement and despair. As the cell doors began to creak open, the tension in the air grew palpable. Men shuffled out, bleary-eyed and resigned, their faces reflecting a lifetime of regrets and battles fought. But today would not be ordinary. A sudden, loud thump reverberated through the hall, and a body crashed to the ground. It was one of the inmates, an unexpected medical emergency triggered by inadequate food and stress. Panic erupted in an instant. As guards rushed to the scene, shouting for backup, the reality of prison life crystallized in that single moment: health risks, exhaustion, and a lack of resources that could lead to tragedy at any moment. Just as chaos threatened to spiral out of control, a shadowy figure in the background committed an act that would ultimately change everything: a hidden contraband exchange taking place amidst the turmoil. This scene would set the stage for an explosive investigation into the systemic issues plaguing this facility. To understand the gravity of life inside this prison, we must first examine its routines. Inmates wake up to harsh lights, devoid of privacy. The prison is designed to strip away individuality. Everything is regulated. From wake-up calls to parole meetings, there is a strict schedule that governs their lives. Some inmates have adapted, finding solace in routine, counting down the days until possible release, while others fall prey to the oppressive atmosphere. The prison houses men from all walks of life, many with stories of violence, desperation, and survival. Inmates like James, a former teacher with a troubling past, reflect on how they ended up in such dire circumstances. Daily activities consist of tedious chores, mandatory programs, and the never-ending quest for respect among peers. However, the daily grind is marred by an unsettling reality: undercurrents of anxiety fueled by corruption and favoritism among the guards. As inmates attempt to navigate these harsh waters, murmurs of discontent resurface. Some speak of food shortages, while others discuss the persistent health issues stemming from unsanitary conditions. At the end of this chapter, a shocking discovery unfolds. A stash of contraband hidden in the kitchen, a cache of drugs and illegal items, was uncovered during a sudden inspection, igniting a firestorm of suspicion and dread. The discovery of contraband rippled through the prison, sparking a series of searches and interrogations. Guards tightened their grip, leaving inmates on edge. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. A sense of betrayal hung over the halls as some inmates pointed fingers, while others remained silent out of fear. Tensions boiled over into heated exchanges, highlighting the divide between the guards and the incarcerated. Daily routines were disrupted as lockdowns became more frequent. Inmates were confined to their cells, deprived off hours of movement and interaction. The air thickened with frustration, and the sound of slamming cell doors punctuated the silence. Inside their cramped quarters, fears grew, both for their safety and for what might come next. As the days dragged on, James recounted a harrowing experience during a lockdown. He witnessed an altercation between two inmates escalate into violence, leading to the use of tear gas by the guards, a chilling reminder of how quickly a situation could spiral out of control. Meanwhile, whispers of a potential uprising floated through the corridors, and uncertainty gripped everyone. The chapter ends with the unsettling realization that one of the inmates had been discovered to be an informant, igniting paranoia among the population. The tension reached a peak, leaving many wondering who could be trusted in a place where survival often depended on alliances formed in moments of desperation. As the facility struggled to maintain order, inmates grappled with the psychological toll of living under constant scrutiny. The isolation felt acutely during meals, where harsh lighting and prison food served as daily reminders of their plight. Many complained of food that was undercooked and unappetizing, servings barely enough to sustain them, leading to malnutrition and health complications across the board. During one particularly difficult meal, James encountered another inmate named Carlos, who had recently suffered from food poisoning after consuming a contaminated meal. The look of pain on Carlos's face resonated deeply as it reflected the collective suffering of many within the prison walls. This was not just an issue of food. It represented a larger commentary on the neglect faced by inmates. In parallel, the prison kitchen was rife with rumors. Some guards were suspected of smuggling food out for personal gain while serving inmates subpar meals, revealing a disturbing layer of corruption. As James and others contemplated the severity of their conditions, a daring plan began to form among a group of inmates looking for justice, and perhaps a way to expose the underlying issues they faced. Just when they thought the network of corruption might be cracked, a surprise inspection rattled the inmates further, leading to a shocking confrontation that would change the course of investigations within the facility. Amid growing unrest, James and his fellow inmates decided to organize a clandestine meeting to discuss the state of affairs and potential actions. They gathered during a rare moment of relative freedom outside for recreation. With the sun beaming down, they expressed their frustrations and shared stories of their struggles, bonds formed through shared adversity. However, their plans were quickly derailed when a group of guards unexpectedly arrived, pulling several inmates aside for questioning. The atmosphere turned tense, leaving James to wonder if their discussions had been compromised. As the guards interrogated the men, the fear of retaliation hung heavy in the air. The risk of being labeled a troublemaker loomed large. Despite the ominous development, James quietly circulated the idea of documenting their experiences, hoping that a written record might draw attention to their plight. As they began compiling testimonies, they uncovered a pattern of consistent neglect and mistreatment, feeding their desire for reform. As the chapter winds down, a mysterious envelope appears in the yard, hinting at future revelations. The implications of what's inside could either lead to catastrophic consequences or spark the change they so desperately seek, leaving the inmates in suspense. With the arrival of the mysterious envelope, curiosity consumed James and his fellow inmates. As they gathered around, they found documents containing evidence of misconduct, emails, reports of health violations, and even notes that implicated certain guards in smuggling operations. The gravity of this revelation electrified the atmosphere. Finally, they had tangible proof of the injustices they faced. Realizing the potential impact of this information, James felt a renewed sense of purpose. They discussed their strategy to present this evidence to legal advocates and family members on the outside. They would seek media attention to hold the prison accountable for its actions. But planning their next move proved fraught with peril. As they strategized, a guard entered the yard unexpectedly, prompting whispers of fear among the inmates. James quickly hid the documents, yet the seed of rebellion had been planted. Inmates began to rally around the idea of taking a stand, driven by the hope that their collective voices could rise above the oppressive silence. However, as the momentum built, a brutal crackdown on dissent began. A sudden lockdown followed by extensive searches threatened to derail their progress. The tension culminated in a confrontation, with inmates pushed to the brink as they faced the harsh reality of their choices. With tensions running high and uncertainty siphoning morale, the inevitable clash between authority and dissent loomed closer. Guards, fueled by the fear of uprising, tightened their grasp on the inmates, leading to harsher penalties for those deemed troublemakers. The atmosphere in the prison mirrored that of a pressure cooker, ready to explode. During yard time, James and a few allies attempted to speak out about their cause, urging fellow inmates to consider what lay ahead. But their voices were stifled by the heavy presence of guards, and whispers of dissent transformed into desperate cries for freedom. Each day added more fuel to the fire. As the situation escalated, an unexpected incident further ignited the brewing conflict. A well-known inmate collapsed due to apparent cardiac arrest, and as guards scrambled to respond, the scene turned chaotic. James watched as his fellow inmates reacted, some shouting out for help while others rallied to support their friend, demonstrating the raw humanity that existed even in dire conditions. In the aftermath of the collapse, Divisions among inmates grew stark, those who wanted to stand together against the system and those who feared the consequences of their actions. It was clear that each choice would dictate the freedom or confinement of many. Just as a fragile alliance began to form, an unexpected betrayal threatened to splinter everything they had fought for. As rumors spread of the inmates' collapse, the prison administration scrambled to control the narrative, attempting to downplay the incident while shoring up their defenses. James and his group felt the pressure closing in on them, realizing that the time for action was now or never. Determined to bring about change, they reached out to families and advocates, passing messages through visitors during designated times. They banded together, sharing their documented evidence and testimonies in the hopes of rallying support from the outside. Each letter sent was a silent act of rebellion. However, not everyone within the prison walls shared their desire for change. A faction of inmates, intimidated by the guards and existing power structures, argued against taking risks. This division created rifts and tensions that threatened to unravel their plans. The facility felt increasingly heavy with anticipation as both sides prepared for an impending confrontation. Simultaneously, the guards began targeting those involved in the movements, enforcing stricter punishments and isolating key figures. Each day that passed brought heightened anxiety. Isolation units awaited for those who challenged authority. Yet James remained steadfast, his resolve solidified by a single thought: change was necessary, no matter the cost. He knew that the next few days would be pivotal, and every decision could lead to either liberation or further despair. The moment of reckoning arrived unexpectedly. On a routine morning, inmates flooded into the yard, their faces a mix of determination and neurosis. Whispers of dissent reached a boiling point as James stepped forward, delivering a heartfelt speech imploring others to unite against the oppressive system. His words resonated, igniting a spark, a fire of rebellion flickering to life among the crowd. But the guards, aware of the growing unrest, quickly moved in to suppress the gathering. What started as a peaceful assembly spiraled into chaos as officers brandished batons and threatened lockdown. Fragments of screams and shouts echoed through the yard as panic ensued. In that moment, a fight-or-flight response rippled through the inmates. In a shocking turn of events, one of the guards got caught in the crossfire, injuring himself as he tried to restore order. The situation escalated rapidly. Tear gas filled the air, throwing the yard into confusion. Amid the chaos, James felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, realizing that their grievances had finally reached a breaking point. As the dust settled amidst screams and confusion, James emerged from the fray with a renewed vigor. What had once felt futile now transformed into a galvanizing force, as his heart raced with the understanding that they stood on the precipice of change. Would this be the tipping point that led to lasting reform, or would the administration retaliate with further oppression? In the aftermath of the chaotic confrontation, the prison administration faced immense scrutiny from both inmates and the outside world. The incident had drawn media attention, and public outrage grew over the revelations of systemic abuse and neglect within the facility. Advocates for prison reform rallied support, amplifying the stories shared by inmates through social media and press coverage. James and his allies felt a surge of hope. A newfound unity blossomed among the inmates as they saw their struggles reflected in the eyes of the public. Windows of opportunity opened, offering a chance to address their grievances at a higher level. The prison was no longer just an isolated world. It had become a focal point in a broader conversation about justice, reform, and dignity. Yet, the path forward remained fraught with challenges. The administration retaliated with increased lockdowns and punitive measures, attempting to quash dissent. In response, James and the others made pivotal decisions to continue their fight, pushing for dialogue and transparency through collective action. Time passed as they awaited responses from legal advocates and family members, revealing the grit and determination of those trapped within the walls. With a spirit of resilience, they united not just to demand better conditions, but to emphasize their inherent rights as human beings. As the chapter closed, it was clear that one thing remained: the bright light of hope and determination burning ever stronger amid the lingering shadows. the fight was far from over. What lay ahead would determine if their voices could ignite a lasting change, not just in their lives, but throughout the entire prison system. The journey from confinement into a brighter future was just beginning, infused with the tenacity of those who dared to rise.